Inspired by the making of the documentary, he currently resides in the small southern town of Plainspoken, Georgia, the hometown of the President of the United States. Please welcome to Webb School.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you, Mr. Callis. Thank you, Webb School. It's great to be here with you this morning. I have known your Director of Communications, Mr. Trout, for a long time. When I was first a songwriter, a musician, kind of just traipsing around the country, going community to community to share stories and songs, Mr. Trout was at a syndicated radio show in Chicago, and they were one of the first outlets to really support my work and my entree into storytelling. So we've had a long friendship, of course, over time. He has relocated here to Middle Tennessee from Chicago, and over time I've relocated from Middle Tennessee, where I lived in Nashville for years, to, as Mr. Callis said, the small town of Plains, Georgia, which is only about 500 to 600 people. And as he noted, it is most famous as being the birthplace and the lifelong hometown of the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and his wife, former First Lady Rosalynn Carter. Jimmy and Rosalynn just passed away at 100 years old and at 97 years old just over the past year. So before I get into talking today a little bit about asking this big kind of universal question, how do I love my neighbor, and how do we get to answer that? How do we get to any kind of conclusion for that? I wanted to show you for the documentary, which we'll be showing tonight here at the Webb School. We did the last interview. It was President Carter's final interview. He was 96 or 97 years old at the time. His health was really fragile, so we decided not to video the interview, but rather do an audio of it out of respect for his physical appearance at the time. But it is his last interview, and we incorporated a little piece of that into the actual documentary, Plainspoken. But what I wanted to show today is we edited about 7 minutes of that final interview with him. So I want you to hear thoughts directly from President Carter about what it means to live alongside our neighbors. You'll see a lot of B-roll film footage from the last days of his life that is edited together with that, as well as some poignant moments from his career as governor of Georgia and as President of the United States. So without further ado, let's just pay attention to the screen. We'll watch that, and then I'll be back in a second. Thanks.
Good morning, President Carter.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Fine so far.
Good. Well, we hope we continue that trend. We have spent a great deal of time in your hometown of Plains producing this documentary, and I want to tell you, we have fallen in love not only with the town, but with the people of Plains, and they are quite the colorful cast of characters, as you know. So my first question for you is, how do you fit into that cast of characters?
Well, I try to fit in just as a common citizen, because we're kind of exalted since I was president. And they call me for a leadership position sometimes, but I give advice and then stay out of the mundane issues that Plains has to face. So I would say just as a private citizen and nothing else.
In a few days, I will lay down my official responsibilities in this office to take up once more the only title in our democracy superior to that of president, the title of citizen.
I wanted to ask you about growing up in Archery, just a few miles outside of where you live now in Plains. What was your first encounter with racism?
Well, I grew up in a community that was completely segregated. There was no mixing of black and white people as far as social things are concerned. But my mother was a registered nurse practicing her medical profession every day, and so she didn't pay any attention to racial segregation. But the community itself was segregated, and we didn't pay any attention to it. My father, who was much more conservative than my mother, treated black people very kindly and with justice and with dignity. So we had a harmonious home and got along well with our neighbors, all of whom were black, by the way.
Where did you first become an advocate for racial unity? Was that also in your childhood where you learned about living with diversity and in unity with your black brothers and sisters?
Yes, that was what it was. I didn't have any close white friends at that time. My only white friends were at school or church. But I got along well with my neighbors with whom I hunted and fished and worked in the field. So we were quite harmonious in our relationship with our African-American neighbors and treated them as equals as much as we could. So we were very close to them and treated them with just common decency and respect.
Get the baby's house.
I know. You gotta visit Amy's house first. He's been a lot to me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He grew up with Dad. He was
Wow.
a friend when they were growing up.
Wow. Yeah, he's my best friend. He's your house first. You'll have a good weekend. Good luck to you.
Can you briefly recount the time where you first realized there was a difference between you and your black friend?
I was about 14 years old, I guess, and some of my friends. And I was coming out of a gate into the barn, and they stepped back and let me go first. I thought it was a trick or something, that I would trip on the trip wire and fall on my face. Later, I realized, much later, their parents had probably told them that we had reached an age where they had to separate, socially as well as racially. So that was my first experience with being treated as a superior just because I was white. And I didn't like it much, but after that we were a little bit more cautious, perhaps. At least my black friends were. But that Passy Gate experience was an eye-opener to me because that was when I first realized, looking back on it, the parents were telling them they had to treat me differently because I was white.
At the end of a long campaign, I believe I know our people of this state as well as anyone could, based on this knowledge of Georgians, north and south, rural and urban, liberal and conservative. I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over. Our people have already made this major and difficult decision, but we cannot underestimate the challenge of hundreds of minor decisions yet to be made.
Do you feel that Plains is integrated today?
Well, in many ways we are. I think looking at the other towns around here and even the county seat and so forth, it's not completely integrated yet, but it's much more advanced in racial equality than most of our other neighbors.
What is your hope for Plains in regards to racial reconciliation?
Our church does a lot of things to reach out to our African-American neighbors who are not quite as well off economically as the white people. So we've been busy repairing their homes and giving out food every month to all of the black people who come to the food bank. And we also give food and help with bad homes of the white people if necessary. But it's mostly among our black people because that's where the need is greatest.
Morning, everybody. This is a special chair that the church just provided for real old people. That's fine. That's good. Okay, how many of you think that we could help make America great by helping just one person lead a better life? Yes. That in the next month, you're going to look around in your own family or right close to you. Just pick out somebody, maybe an old person that's living by themselves or something, and you might say, why don't you let me check on you every now and then? Or next time I bake a cake, I'll bring you at least a half of a cake. and just go by their house and have a cup of coffee with them. Like Mother Teresa said, not extraordinary things, not great things, just simple things. I think that will make America better.
One more question for you, President Carter. If you were to leave this world with one single message, what would that message be?
My religious faith is very important to me, and I would just like for the teachings of Jesus Christ to be implemented in the whole world. Love one another and have religious faith and have a complete equality of treatment of all the people, black and white, and other races as well, and treat each other the way we would like for them to treat us.
Thank you so much for your time, President Carter, this morning. It means so much to us. And again, we've so enjoyed being a part of your town and will continue to be a part of your town in the months and years to come. So thank you.
Well, you'll always be welcome here. Thank you.
Well, you heard the last question that I asked President Carter in that particular interview, which was, if you could leave the world with one message, what would it be? And you heard his response that his religious faith is important to him, that he wished the teachings of Jesus could be incorporated into the world. I think primarily what he's referencing there is the teaching to love our neighbor as ourselves, to treat other people with dignity and respect. So when you think about whoever your neighbor may be, that's maybe in your family, in your classroom, on your team, whatever, if you would just call out to me, you can just call out loud, what are some ways we can either love our neighbor or treat others with dignity and respect? What are some ways that we do that? Anybody? You don't know how to be kind. I'm just kidding. Smile, okay? Something simple. What would you do for a neighbor, for a friend, to treat them with dignity and respect, to treat them as an equal? Anything. Sure, compliment, encouragement, yes. Give them a hug, that's right. Physical touch is extremely important. Affection, all right? What else? Give me one or two more. Say again? Hold the door open for them, right? In humility, let someone go before yourself. Yes. Flowers, all right. Yeah, pick some flowers, give some flowers. Anybody else? Let me hear from a gentleman in here. I heard from one. One more. Guys, what would we do to treat our neighbors with dignity and respect, to love our neighbor? Anything. Say hi. Okay, really, thank you. Way to go, champ. All right, so I would say more than ever in our world's history, right, that we live in this very diverse but globally connected society, right? So you may live here right in Middle Tennessee. I may reside in Southwest Georgia, but we really live as citizens of the world. So when we begin to think about that question, how do I love my neighbor, right? With all our different religious beliefs, our political leanings, our ideologies, our influences, our cultural backgrounds, our lifestyles, with all of that diversity, trying to live peacefully under one universal roof, then answering the question, how do I love my neighbor, is not really that simple, is it? It's a bit tricky. And so what I think about, to answer that question, I first have to ask the question, who is my neighbor, right? And as Mr. Callis has already said, I moved to Plains, Georgia through the influence of making this documentary because I fell in love with the people in the place. And sure, I first got there because President Carter and Mrs. Carter are huge heroes of mine. I admire their work in the world greatly. But it was more than the Carters that kept me coming back, all right? You see, there's this sort of, in the Deep South, there's this sort of plaintive mystery, or I call it a haunted history, in the Deep South. In Plains, there's a train track that runs right through the middle of town. And on one side, most of our black citizens live there. And on the other side, most of the white folks live there. But you see, I am now one of those citizens. So I'm all up in the mix trying to figure out, how do we live while separated? How do we live together? How do I love my neighbor? President Carter, before he was president of the United States, before he was governor of Georgia, he went on a mission trip, okay? And he met this pastor, Cuban-American pastor Eloy Cruz. And they were kind of an odd pairing, but they had been tasked with witnessing their faith to immigrants up in Massachusetts. And President Carter, who was just Jimmy Carter at the time, he was blown away by Pastor Cruz's seemingly easy ability to convert complete strangers into lifelong friends just in one conversation. And so he asked him, he said, Pastor Cruz, what is the secret to your success in communicating with people so well? And Pastor Cruz thought about it for a second, and he said to his new friend, he said, Senor Jimmy, he said, you must only have two loves in your life, one for God and one for the person in front of you at any given moment in time. When I read those words, I've never met Pastor Cruz, but I thought, are you serious? This huge, kind of daunting question, how do I love my neighbor? It's as simple as being present with the person in front of me. And I began to think about being present with someone who's right in front of me. All my insecurities about what will they think about me? How will they perceive me? How would they feel about me? What if I say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time? I kept thinking, what about me? And I could kind of almost hear an echo of Pastor Cruz's words. No, Andrew, just pay attention to the person in front of you right now. Then I thought, well, what about all my opinions on marriage, on immigration, on gun violence, on abortion? What about what I think about Donald Trump? And I could hear him again. No, just honor the woman in front of you right now. Or pay attention to that young man who's sitting in the corner by himself in your classroom, in the cafeteria, on the sideline, on your soccer field, or side stage in your theater group. Go pay attention to him. Ask him some questions. Listen to him. How do I love my neighbor? Well, if the answer really is being present with the person in front of you at any given time, then I've got to call out, I've got to be made aware of the things that keep me from being in this moment with you right now. So call out a couple more things. What are some things that consistently distract you from being present? Social media, phones, what else? Yes. I think we could probably sum it up for you and for me with our phones, right? I think usually what's keeping me from being present is right in the palm of my hand, and it kind of feeds this need to fire off another email or send another text. For me, it's scrolling Instagram. Insta stories will take hours of my life away from me. For you, it might be another snap. It might be numbing your mind for a couple hours on TikTok. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with finding new ways to connect with one another. But in my experience, in my life, this far at least, I've discovered that nothing could ever replace FaceTime in real time with another human being. The thing is, for me, I'm just so afraid of being known, right? I'm afraid that if you find out, that I may get found out or get discovered, you may realize what I did last night is completely contradictory to what I'm preaching this morning. I have this little blue book that my counselor has me keep a list of names in, all right? And those names are people who are safe people. They're green light people in my life where I can share anything about my life. I can be as vulnerable, honest, transparent with them, share every little detail in safety. Now, that list is really short. But I don't think it's short because there's a shortage of safe people in my circle of community. It's just that I'm so afraid of losing my place in line, of losing my reputation, my position. What if I find out that I don't actually belong? Or worse than that for me, what if I find out I'm not actually loved? And I wonder if you have some of the same fears, some of the same thoughts of being rejected, isolated, displaced, or unloved. How can I love my neighbor if I don't even know how to love myself? It takes a lot of courage to be present, to know ourselves. I've got addictions in my life that I will have to face head on for the rest of my life. And it takes an incredible amount of courage for me to pull back the bed cover, to put my feet on the ground, get dressed, and make that long drive to my therapist's office. For you, it might be, I don't know, a trusted parent of a friend, or it might be a minister at church, or it might be scheduling an appointment with your counselor here at the Webb School. But it is imperative for me that I get good advice from a good therapist, from a good counselor. It's imperative for me that I call up a good friend for some meaningful conversation. For me, being present, being together is a lifesaver. I think that we all want to find our space to belong, right? We all want to make a difference in the world, or at least in the life of one other person. I really do believe that we want to love our neighbor. The more I'm learning about myself and the people around me, the more I'm learning that to love my neighbor well, I have to learn to love myself. And you know what the beautiful thing is? When I learn to love myself, I no longer have to think so much about myself. And then it becomes a lot simpler, a lot more doable, a lot more tangible to answer that big question, to live out that big question, how do I love my neighbor? And it really does come down to loving the person in front of me, to being present with the person in front of you and in front of me at any given time. Thank you, Webb School.